Alright, so I'm finally going to do a video on this. A lot of people have been asking me to, and it's about these Harbor Freight air compressors. I honestly recommend these air compressors to anybody that has never had a big air compressor before. They are great compressors. They are very loud, and they're not the fastest ones, but they're great for shop use and even up to like impact guns and airing up tires, although you do have to refill it every once in a while. But the main issues when you get these are, one, there's a capacitor to help the thing to start inside the casing here, the shroud, and sometimes they come unplugged. And what you do is you just take a pair of pliers, and it's just a normal butt connector, kind of like this, and you just squeeze them together so that way it stays on the terminal. And that would be the case if you plug it in, turn it on, and nothing happens, or something happens but it's super strange and it barely moves at all. Then that would be a connection issue or just something's unplugged. The second thing, the number one most issue that I've ever had with these things is I like to call it a momentum valve. It just basically lets the air compressor or the motor gain speed, so that way it can start being under load, because these motors have a hard time starting. And here you can see that it's doing that. And then that'll trip, and then you have to try it again, and it just won't do it. So you can see when I try to do that, here, push this back in, something comes up there. And it's coming up too fast because it's not getting enough speed. And you may have a small electrical problem, voltage issue with your house or something, but mainly it's just that spring. If you do end up breaking this while you try to fix it, if you don't feel like replacing the air compressor with the warranty they offer, you can go up to the store and buy yourself a ball valve and just have it open when you turn it on, and then once it gets speed, close the ball valve, and then all the air will start going down into this check valve here into the tank. As you can see, it'll turn on and blow air out the top there. On my last air compressor, I've had two of these so far, actually three. The first one, it was just getting close to the warranty, so I took it back and got the new one, and it was the same exact one as the first one. And this one I got because the last one had a full acrylic drain plug, and that broke off, so I just went ahead and got this air compressor. And this one has a metal with glass drain plug, and that's a lot nicer. It was a while ago that I did this, but it looks like what happened was I couldn't get the thing out of there, and I ended up just drilling into the top. The problem is that air needs to be able to go through this little channel here and through those little holes, and sometimes those little holes are just not big enough. Sometimes there's some stuff in there. I'm not sure what this one's going to look like on the inside. I apologize, I put those holes in myself as a mod to let some more air through there, and I wouldn't do that to be honest, because the O-ring has to seat up against there. I would just take a little bit off the edges, but like I said, I'm pretty sure that I wasn't able to get this out because I did crack the brass just trying to get it out now, but I'll figure something out for that, probably solder. Instead of doing solder, I'm just going to go ahead and either let it lay on down in there because it can't go all the way down and drop through that hole, or just put some washers in there to keep it from catching. But first of all, I'm going to clean all this up, and then I'll start grinding and drilling. This O-ring looks a little worn, so I'm going to go ahead and use my Harbor Freight O-ring kit to put a new one in there. That's the new one on the left. It is a metric O-ring, by the way. So you can see that it's not through the hole right now, but if you get it through, it's about right there. So there was probably a C-clip in there at one point or something, and you want to make sure it's always in that hole so it doesn't just get stuck like that and not go up inside there. So I went ahead and ground, I don't know if you can see that, but I went ahead and ground the little nubs, whatever's left there on the top, smooth, so that way that's about where I want it, and then I'll make that washer so that way it doesn't fall down. Now I'm going to go ahead and grind this. So this is what it looks like to start. You don't want to do anything to this right here, at least not down there where the O-ring sets, because it kind of seats up against the wall of it too. Alright, so now you can see the small little airflow mods I made there. Now this lip, where it gets bigger there, is actually where the spring sets. It keeps it from getting stuck up, and you don't want to grind that down too much, but you can see I did like a big grind just in one spot, so that way it can slip right up under the spring. If you just do a small grind, it's not even going to do anything because the spring's just going to sit right there. And then the big grind is in line with the long small grind that goes all the way up the stem there. And you can just compare the tip there to the actual hole in there. And you can see there's quite a big difference, so air can flow around there. But the major drag that's going to occur is actually on the bottom of this plate, so that's what's going to push it up. So it's not going to affect that, because there's a lot of air flowing through there, so it'll push it up and seal just fine. And then also I did a couple of little quick grinds around there, but not too far, because like I said, the O-ring's going to sit there. So that's where the O-ring's going to set. And with these mods, I know with mine at least, it's not going to seal perfectly when it gets up and going. And you'll feel some air blow out the top of it, but it's not that big of a deal. You're not going to lose but like 10 seconds of quick air buildup time. So I'm going to put that all back together, or find the washer first and then put it back together and show you if it works. Here's the washer I found. It's pretty thick, so it'll fill the gap, and it doesn't quite fit in the hole, so I'm going to do a little grinding on the outside. So now the washer fits in there perfect, and you can see the tabs right there where it was rubbing, that little streak. So it's going all the way down there, and it sits in there actually perfectly where it used to be. So that works perfect. And I might drill that out, but I don't think I'll have to. We'll see. And then the last thing, you're going to want to stretch the spring a little bit. Of course, from the heat, they start acting up. Just stretch it a little bit, not too much. Try to get it perfect. I got that spring stretched, and it looks like it's just going to go right back to what it was, but might work. Now you can see how easy it is to go up and down. I did sharpen the tip on the end, so it's not going to be a pain to get centered. And then when it's all the way in, low battery. So now you can see there's a pretty decent gap in there for air to go. It's not that much compared to the size of the piston and the compressor, but should be enough to get it up to speed. And that spring is pretty strong. It actually pushes it out pretty far, so I'm going to install it and see if it starts. So it did not want to start, so I just stretched the spring a little bit more, and now I'll try it. Oh, and before I tried that, I went ahead and ground a little bit more metal off there. So what was happening is this little washer here that I ground with the small hole was pointing high velocity air straight at a flat plate with no holes, and by the time it lifted up, it already had so much speed that it was just stuck there at the top. So I switched to this little one, and it allows air to go around it because it's not perfect. It's got some weird but it's a little bit thinner in the middle. I don't know if you can see that. And I tested it with this washer, and it works just fine, so I'm going to go ahead and do a couple tests. There are a few adjustments for this air compressor. Number one, I don't run mine with an air filter. It makes it a lot louder, but it does take like 20 to 30 seconds off your fill-up time, so it really helps. The downside is that it just makes it a little louder. The other one in here, and you can look it up on the web, there's a couple of screws in there, and you can adjust them to adjust the shut-off time and the kick-in time. I've got my kick-in time set to a little bit over 90 and shut-off to a little bit over 130 psi, and then you start running into troubles with the emergency release valve. So don't go any higher than that. I had to modify mine to get it to do that pressure already. But here's it starting at 70 psi. What I was demonstrating there with the Kleenex is that there's no leaks up in here, and you can see when it turned off it came right back down. Sorry, my phone's on the charger. I'm going to go ahead and leave it on and then let the air out of the nozzle there and see if it starts back up by itself at 90 psi. Well, there you have it. It took a little bit of work and grinding and modding, spring stretching to get that valve to open and close when it's supposed to, but it'll start now for another 8 months until I get my new one with the warranty.